The bitter cold had already claimed everything Olivia Thorne owned except the land itself, and a small cloth pouch hidden beneath the floorboards of her tiny cabin. She stood at the window of her new home in North Platte, Nebraska, watching the last remnants of frost cling stubbornly to the dead wheat that stretched across the frozen fields like a brown and withered ocean. It was March of 1878, and she had arrived just 3 weeks earlier as a mail-order bride to a man she had never met, only to find his grave instead of his arms waiting for her. The letter had been so carefully written, so full of promise. Thomas Greenfield had seemed kind in his words, describing his modest but productive farm, his hopes for a family, his dreams of building something lasting in this hard land. What he had not mentioned was the illness that would take him before the winter ended, leaving his younger brother to manage the farm alone, and leaving Olivia stranded in a place she never imagined she would be. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and turned from the window. The cabin was sparse but clean. A single room with a stone fireplace, a narrow bed, a table with 2 chairs and little else. Her trunk sat in the corner, still half unpacked because she was not certain she would be staying. The money she had brought with her, her life savings from 6 years of working as a seamstress in Boston, amounted to $340. It was sewn into the lining of that cloth pouch. Every penny she had managed to save from her meager wages, every cent she had hoped would be the foundation of her new life. Outside, she could hear the sound of an axe splitting wood. That would be Owen Zimmerman, Thomas's younger brother. He had been the one to meet her at the train station, hat in his hands, eyes red from grief and exhaustion, delivering news that shattered the fragile hope she had carried across half the country. He had offered to pay for her return ticket to Boston, his voice quiet and apologetic, as if his brother's death had been a personal failing. But Olivia had not taken the ticket. She had nowhere to return to. The boarding house where she had lived was already rented to someone else. Her position at the dress shop had been filled, and more than that, something in Owen's eyes had made her pause. Desperation, perhaps, or determination. The same thing she saw in her own reflection each morning. The door opened, bringing a gust of cold air and Owen himself, his arms full of firewood. He was 24 years old, just a year older than Olivia, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds. He moved with the careful economy of someone who had learned not to waste energy, stacking the wood beside the fireplace without looking at her. "I brought enough to last you through the night," he said. His voice was rough, like he did not use it often. "The temperature is supposed to drop again." "Thank you," Olivia said. She had been saying thank you to him for 3 weeks now for everything he did, which was considerable. He had given her the cabin, small as it was, while he slept in the barn. He had shared his dwindling food supplies. He had asked nothing of her except that she decide what she wanted to do. Owen straightened and finally looked at her. There were lines around his eyes that seemed too deep for someone so young, carved there by worry and hard work. "I will be riding into town tomorrow to speak with the bank." About the loan. She knew about the loan. Everyone in North Platte seemed to know about it. Thomas had borrowed money the previous spring to buy seed and equipment, confident that the harvest would cover the debt. But the winter had come early and stayed late, killing the crops before they could mature. Now the bank wanted its money and there was none to give. "How much time will they give you?" Olivia asked. "Not much. Maybe until June if I can convince them I have a plan." He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture she had come to recognize as his way of dealing with stress. "But I do not know what plan I could give them. I cannot plant without seed, and I cannot buy seed without money." Olivia's hand moved unconsciously to her skirt pocket, where she kept the key to her trunk. The pouch was in there, hidden and heavy with possibility. She had been thinking about it for days now, weighing the risk against the alternative. If she gave him the money and the farm failed anyway, she would have nothing. But if she returned to Boston with her savings intact, she would be starting over in a city that had already chewed her up once. What if you had the money? She heard herself say. What if you could buy the seed and the equipment you needed? Owen's expression shifted from tired resignation to cautious confusion. That is not something I can think about. I do not have it, and there is no way to get it. But if you did, Olivia pressed, would it work? Could you save the farm? He studied her for a long moment, and she could see him calculating, running through scenarios in his mind. The land is good, he said slowly. The well is deep. If I could plant wheat and corn in the next few weeks, and if the weather cooperates, yes. There would be enough harvest to pay the bank and have some left over, but that is a lot of ifs. Everything is ifs, Olivia said. She moved to her trunk and opened it, her fingers finding the pouch without hesitation. When she turned back, Owen was watching her with an expression she could not read. She held out the pouch. I have $340. It was supposed to be for my future, for my new life here. I think the farm is part of that future. Owen did not reach for the pouch. He stared at it as if it were a snake that might strike. You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Thomas made you promises he could not keep, but those were his promises, not mine. I know, Olivia said, but I am not giving this to you because of Thomas. I am giving it because I need a future and you need help, and maybe we can build something together. Together, Owen repeated as if testing the word. As partners, Olivia clarified quickly, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. In the farm. If my money saves it, then I should have a stake in it. That is only fair. Something flickered in Owen's expression, relief maybe, or respect. He took the pouch carefully, weighing it in his hand. This is everything you have. Yes, if the farm fails, you will lose it all. I know. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time since she had arrived, Olivia felt seen. Not as an inconvenience or an obligation, but as a person making a choice. Then we are partners, he said, extending his hand. Equal partners, whatever comes. His hand was rough with calluses, warm despite the cold that permeated everything. Olivia shook it firmly, sealing a bargain that felt both terrifying and exactly right. The next morning, Owen rode into town before dawn. Olivia spent the day cleaning the cabin more thoroughly than it needed, trying to work off the nervous energy that hummed through her. She had just bet her entire future on a man she barely knew and a piece of land that had already failed once. It should have felt reckless. Instead, it felt like the first decision she had made in years that was truly hers. When Owen returned in the late afternoon, he had supplies. Sacks of seed, corn, and wheat, a new plow blade, tools that gleamed in the fading sunlight. He also had papers, which he spread on the cabin table while Olivia lit the lamp. I paid the bank what was owed for this month and the next, he explained, pointing to a receipt. That bought us time. I used the rest for seed and equipment. The man at the general store gave me a fair price when I explained the situation. Olivia looked at the numbers, the careful accounting of her money transformed into tangible things. When do you start planting? Tomorrow, if the ground has thawed enough. I will work every daylight hour. He hesitated, then added, I know you came here expecting a different life. A home, a husband. I cannot give you those things. But if you are willing to work, if you are willing to take the risk with me, I promise I will do everything I can to make this succeed. I did not come here to be idle, Olivia said. Tell me what needs to be done. What needed to be done, it turned out, was everything. The farm had been neglected during Thomas's illness and after his death. Fences needed mending. The barn needed repairs. The chicken coop had to be rebuilt because winter storms had destroyed half of it. And before any planting could happen, the fields had to be cleared of the dead crops and the soil had to be prepared. Olivia had never done farm work in her life. Her hands, accustomed to the delicate work of needles and thread, blistered within hours of picking up a hammer. Her back ached from bending to gather the dried, broken stalks of last year's failed wheat. But she did not complain, and she did not stop. Owen worked alongside her, always careful to take the heaviest tasks himself, but never suggesting she should rest while there was work to be done. They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks. Up before sunrise, working until the light failed, eating simple meals in exhausted silence before collapsing into their separate sleeping spaces. Owen remained in the barn, insisting it was proper, and Olivia did not argue. There was something comforting about the boundary it created, a clear line that made their partnership feel safe and uncomplicated. But as the days passed and the weather slowly warmed, Olivia began to notice things about Owen that she had not seen before. The way he always made sure she had the better portions of food, the quiet patience with which he taught her how to properly mend a fence or handle a plow, the rare smile that transformed his serious face into something almost boyish when the work went well. She noticed, too, the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not paying attention. Not with hunger or possession, but with something softer. Gratitude, perhaps, mixed with something she could not quite name. April brought warmer weather and the serious work of planting. Owen was in the fields from dawn until dusk, walking behind the plow in straight, precise lines, then following with the seed. Olivia took over the other work, caring for the chickens they had managed to buy with the last of her money, tending the small vegetable garden she had started near the cabin, making repairs where she could. One evening, she brought dinner out to the field where Owen was still working. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and he was silhouetted against it, a dark figure against the light. He looked up when she approached, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "You should stop," Olivia said finally. "It is too dark to see what you are doing." "Just a few more rows," Owen said, but she could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "The rows will still be here tomorrow." She held out the plate she had brought. "Eat something, please." He set down the seed bag and took the plate, sinking onto the ground where he stood. Olivia sat beside him, not touching but close enough to feel the heat radiating from his work-warmed body. They ate in comfortable silence, watching as the stars began to appear. "I used to hate this place," Owen said suddenly. "When Thomas first dragged me out here, I thought it was the end of the world, nothing but dirt and sky and work that never ended." "What changed?" Olivia asked. "I am not sure it did. It is still dirt and sky and work." He was quiet for a moment, "But maybe I changed. Or maybe I just stopped fighting what it was and started seeing what it could be." "What could it be?" Owen looked at her, and in the fading light his eyes were very dark. "Home," he said simply. "If we can make it work, if we can make it through this year." "We will," Olivia said with more confidence than she felt. "We have to." He smiled then, that rare transformation that made her heart do strange things in her chest. "You are tougher than you look, Olivia Thorne." "You do not know what I looked like when I got here," she pointed out. "I could have looked very tough." That surprised a laugh out of him, a sound she had never heard before. It was warm and genuine, and it made something shift inside her, like a key turning in a lock she had not known was there. May arrived with rain, glorious and terrifying all at once. The seeds needed water, but too much would wash them away or rot them in the ground. Owen watched the sky with an intensity that bordered on obsession, trying to read in the clouds whether they were blessed or cursed. The rain stopped after 3 days, and the sun returned. Within a week, the first green shoots appeared in the fields, tiny but unmistakable. Olivia was in the garden when Owen came running from the wheat field, his face lit with an expression she had never seen. "Look," he said, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the field. "Look at this." The wheat was coming up in neat rows, each plant small but healthy, reaching for the sun. It was the most beautiful thing Olivia had ever seen, this proof that their gamble might actually pay off. "It is growing," she said unnecessarily, but Owen did not seem to mind. "It is perfect. The spacing is perfect. The germination rate is better than I hoped." He was still holding her hand, she realized, his grip tight with excitement. "If it keeps growing like this, if we get a normal summer, we will have a real harvest." Without thinking, Olivia threw her arms around him. It was impulsive and probably improper, but she did not care. Owen stiffened for a moment, then his arms came around her, holding her close. He smelled like sun and soil and honest sweat, and Olivia felt something in her chest expand, filling spaces she had not realized were empty. When they pulled apart, both of them were flushed and not quite meeting each other's eyes. "Sorry," Olivia mumbled. "I just got excited." "Do not apologize," Owen said quietly. "I got excited too." Something had shifted between them in that moment. An acknowledgement of feelings that had been building since the day Olivia had handed Owen her life savings. They did not speak of it directly, but it was there in the way Owen started finding excuses to work near wherever Olivia was. In the way, Olivia made sure to bring him water during the hottest part of the day, staying to talk for a few minutes. In the way their hands would brush during dinner, brief touches that felt charged with meaning. The crops continued to grow. The wheat turned from green to gold. The corn stalks grew tall and strong. By the end of June, when the bank's deadline came, Owen was able to meet with the banker and show him fields that were clearly going to produce a substantial harvest. The banker, a stern man named Mr. Patterson, rode out to see for himself, then grudgingly agreed to extend the loan until after the harvest. "You have done well," Mr. Patterson admitted as they stood at the edge of the wheat field. "Better than I expected, frankly. Your brother was a good man, but he never quite had the knack for farming." "I had help," Owen said, looking at Olivia. Mr. Patterson followed his gaze, his expression thoughtful. "I heard you had a woman living on the property. There has been some talk in town." Olivia felt her spine stiffen. She knew what kind of talk there would be. A single man and single woman living on the same farm, even in separate buildings, would be enough to set tongues wagging in a small town like North Platte. "Miss Thorne is my business partner," Owen said firmly. "She invested in this farm and has worked as hard as any man to make it successful. Without her, none of this would exist." "I am sure that is true," Mr. Patterson said, but his tone suggested he did not think business partnership was all that was happening. "Still, you might want to consider making the arrangement more official for the sake of appearances." After the banker left, Owen and Olivia stood in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Owen said, "I am sorry about that. People should not assume things." "But they will," Olivia said. She had been thinking about this herself, about the way the women in town looked at her when she went in for supplies, the whispers that followed her down the street. "He is right, in a way. The way we are living is unconventional." "What are you saying?" Olivia took a breath. "I am saying maybe we should think about what we actually want. Not what is proper or what people expect, but what we want." Owen turned to face her fully. "What do you want, Olivia?" It was the first time she had really let herself consider the question. She had been so focused on survival, on making the farm work, that she had not allowed herself to think about her own heart. But the truth was unavoidable now, standing in the golden wheat with Owen looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered. "I want this," she said, gesturing at the fields but meaning so much more. "I want the farm and the work and the partnership, and I want you." The words hung in the air between them. Owen's expression went through several changes before settling on something tender and a little awed. "I have wanted you since the day you handed me your savings and trusted me with your future," he said. "I did not think I had the right to say it. You came here expecting to marry Thomas, not his younger brother who has nothing to offer but dirt and debt." "You have more to offer than you know," Olivia said. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "You have integrity and determination and kindness, and you have made me feel like I belong somewhere for the first time in my life." Owen cupped her face in his rough, gentle hands. "I love you, Olivia Thorne. I know it is fast and I know the circumstances are strange, but I love you." "I love you too," she whispered, and then he was kissing her, soft and then less soft, his arms wrapping around her like he was afraid she might disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and smiling, Owen said, "Will you marry me? Not because it is proper or convenient, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "Yes," Olivia said. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in North Platte. The ceremony was simple, attended by a handful of neighbors and presided over by a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. Olivia wore the best dress she had brought from Boston, a pale blue cotton that she had made herself. Owen wore his only suit, carefully brushed and pressed. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, and Owen kissed her in front of God and the community, Olivia felt a completeness she had never experienced. This was not the life she had imagined when she left Boston. It was better. It was real and hard and hers. The wedding night was spent in the cabin, which they had spent the previous week making more livable. Owen had built a larger bed, and Olivia had sewn curtains for the window and a quilt for the mattress. They came together with a mix of nervousness and eagerness, learning each other's bodies with patient tenderness. Afterward, lying in Owen's arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, Olivia said, "I am glad I came here. Even though Thomas died and everything went wrong, I am glad." Owen's arms tightened around her. "I am sorry you did not get to meet him. He would have liked you. He had good taste in women, even if he only knew you from letters. Do you think he would be happy about this, about us?" "I think he would be thrilled. He always wanted me to settle down and stop drifting." Owen pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "He would say I married up." Olivia laughed. "A seamstress from a boarding house. Hardly." "A woman brave enough to bet everything on a failing farm and work until her hands bled to save it," Owen corrected. "Definitely marrying up." The harvest came in August, and it was everything they had hoped for. The wheat was thick and golden, the corn tall and heavy with ears. They hired help from town to bring it all in, men who worked for a share of the crop and were happy to have the employment. For 2 weeks, the farm was full of activity and noise, a stark contrast to the quiet months before. When the last of it was tallied, Owen sat down with the numbers and a smile spread across his face. "We did it," he said, showing Olivia the ledger. "We have enough to pay the bank in full, buy seed for next year, and have money left over for improvements." Olivia looked at the numbers, hardly believing them. They had started with nothing but dead crops and debt, and now they had a thriving farm and a future. "What kind of improvements?" "Whatever you want," Owen said. "A bigger house, maybe, more livestock. You have earned the right to decide." They decided on both. Over the winter, with the help of hired carpenters, they built a proper house with 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, and a sitting room with windows that let in the light. They bought dairy cows and pigs, diversifying beyond crops. Olivia started a larger garden and learned to preserve food for the winter months. As the farm grew, so did their love. They learned each other's rhythms, the way Owen grew quiet when he was worried and Olivia hummed when she was happy. They learned to work together, to disagree without fighting, to support each other through the hard days and celebrate the good ones. In the spring of 1879, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen while they were working in the garden together, and he dropped the hoe he was holding and picked her up, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, like he needed to repeat it to believe it. "We are going to be parents." "Put me down before you hurt yourself," Olivia said, but she was smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia was sick most mornings and exhausted all the time. But Owen was attentive and worried, constantly making sure she was comfortable and not working too hard. He took over most of her usual tasks and hired a woman from town to come help with the housework. On a cold November morning, with a midwife and Owen both present, Olivia gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas, after Owen's brother, and when Owen held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face, Olivia felt her heart could not possibly hold any more love, but somehow it did. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, as the farm continued to prosper, as their life together deepened and strengthened, Olivia discovered that love was not a finite resource. It expanded to fill whatever space was needed. 2 years after Thomas was born, they had a daughter named Clara. And 3 years after that, twin boys they named James and Samuel. The house was full of noise and chaos and laughter, so different from the silent cabin where Olivia had first arrived. On a warm summer evening in 1886, 8 years after that first terrible spring, Olivia and Owen sat on the porch of their house, watching their children play in the yard. Thomas, now 7, was teaching his younger siblings how to catch fireflies. Clara was dancing in circles, her blonde hair flying. The twins were tumbling over each other like puppies. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Owen asked. "If you had taken the return ticket to Boston, if you had kept your money and left?" Olivia considered the question. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I cannot imagine it, really. This is my life. You are my life. I do not remember what it felt like to be the person I was before." "I remember," Owen said. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "You were brave and determined and a little bit lost. You are still brave and determined, but you are not lost anymore." "Neither are you," Olivia said. It was true. The hard edges that had defined Owen when they first met had softened over the years. He smiled easily now, laughed often, and moved through the world with the confidence of a man who knew his place in it. The farm had grown beyond anything they had originally imagined. They now had over 200 acres under cultivation, a substantial herd of cattle, and enough hired help that Owen was not working himself into exhaustion every day. They had become respected members of the community, known for their fair dealings and their willingness to help neighbors in need. Olivia had also started a small business of her own, using her sewing skills to make clothes for the women in town. It was not about the money, though the extra income was nice. It was about having something that was hers, a connection to the skills that had sustained her before she came west. As the sun set and the fireflies began to emerge in earnest, Owen called the children in to get ready for bed. There was the usual chaos of washing faces and hands, putting on night clothes, listening to the nightly complaints about not being tired. But eventually, all 4 children were tucked into their beds, and Owen and Olivia had the evening to themselves. They sat together on the porch swing, Owen had built the previous summer, moving gently in the warm night air. The sounds of the farm surrounded them, the lowing of cattle in the distance, the chirp of crickets, the rustle of the wheat in the breeze. "I have been thinking," Owen said, "about expanding the north field. The soil is good there, and we have been letting it sit fallow for too long." "That is a good idea," Olivia said, "but I have been thinking about something too." "What is that?" "I want to start helping other women who come west. Women like I was, arriving with nothing but hope and finding themselves in difficult situations. Maybe we could build a small house on the property, a place where they could stay while they figure out what to do next." Owen was quiet for a moment, and Olivia worried she had overstepped. But then he squeezed her hand and said, "That is a wonderful idea. We have been blessed. We should share that blessing." Over the next year, they built a small cottage on the far side of the property. It was simple but comfortable, with a bedroom, a sitting room, and a kitchen. The first woman to stay there was a widow whose husband had died on the journey west, leaving her alone in a strange land with no money and no prospects. Olivia helped her find work in town and introduced her to the community. 6 months later, the woman married a local shopkeeper and moved into town, but she remained a close friend. More women followed over the years. Some stayed a few weeks, some a few months. Olivia helped each one according to her needs, whether that was finding work, learning new skills, or simply having a safe place to heal from whatever circumstances had brought them west. The cottage became known throughout the region as a place of refuge, and Olivia became known as someone who understood what it meant to start over. The children grew. Thomas turned out to have his father's aptitude for farming and his mother's head for numbers. By the time he was 15, he was managing significant portions of the farm operation. Clara inherited her mother's creativity and her father's determination, and she announced at age 12 that she intended to be a doctor, a declaration that would have seemed absurd to many, but that Owen and Olivia supported completely. The twins were wild and adventurous, always getting into trouble but always together. They talked about heading west to California or north to Montana, seeking adventure and fortune. Owen and Olivia listened to their dreams and encouraged them, knowing that when the time came, they would support whatever their sons chose to do. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1888, Owen surprised Olivia with a trip to Denver. They left the children with neighbors and took the train to the city, staying in a real hotel with running water and electric lights. It was Olivia's first time in a city since leaving Boston, and the noise and crowds were overwhelming at first. But Owen had planned everything carefully. They went to a real restaurant where other people cooked and served the food. They saw a theatrical performance. They walked through parks and looked at buildings and simply enjoyed being together without the constant demands of the farm and the children. On their last night in Denver, lying in the comfortable hotel bed, Owen said, "I want to tell you something I have never said properly." "What is that?" Olivia asked, turning to face him in the darkness. "Thank you for trusting me with your savings, for taking a chance on a failing farm and a man you did not know, for working yourself to exhaustion to make it succeed, for giving me a family and a life I never imagined I could have." His voice was thick with emotion. "You saved more than the farm, Olivia. You saved me." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "You saved me too. I was so lost when I came here. I thought I was coming to fulfill someone else's dream, but instead I found my own." They made love that night with the tenderness and passion that came from truly knowing another person, from years of shared struggle and shared joy. And when they returned to the farm a few days later, to the chaos of 4 excited children and a list of things that needed attention, they came back renewed, and even more committed to the life they had built together. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of planting and harvest, of children growing and changing, of the farm expanding and evolving. There were hard times, of course. A drought in 1890 that reduced the harvest and made them worry about the future. An illness that swept through the county in 1892, sparing their family but taking several neighbors. The normal struggles of raising strong-willed children and managing a large operation. But there were far more good times. Thomas's graduation from school and his announcement that he wanted to stay on the farm and eventually take it over. Clara's acceptance to a medical college in Chicago, a triumph that made both Owen and Olivia cry with pride. The twins' decision to start a horse breeding operation on a portion of the farm land, combining their love of adventure with a practical business. In 1895, Thomas married a young woman from town named Sarah. The wedding was held on the farm, with nearly the entire town of North Platte attending. It was a joyous celebration, made even sweeter when Thomas and Sarah announced they would be building a house on the property and raising their family there. Olivia watched her son dance with his new bride and felt the circle of life completing itself. She had come to this farm as a stranger, alone and uncertain. Now she was surrounded by family and friends, rooted in this place as deeply as the wheat that grew in the fields. Owen found her standing at the edge of the celebration, watching it all with tears in her eyes. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Are you happy?" he asked. "I am more than happy," Olivia said. "I am content, I am fulfilled. I am exactly where I am supposed to be." "Good," Owen said, "because I feel the same way." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other and watching their family celebrate. The farm that had nearly died now thrived, home to multiple generations. The money Olivia had brought from Boston, every penny she had saved while working in that dress shop so many years ago, had been the seed that grew into all of this. But it was more than money that saved the farm. It was determination and hard work and faith in each other. It was love, given freely and growing stronger with each passing year. It was the willingness to take a risk, to trust, to build something together even when the odds seemed impossible. As the sun set on Thomas's wedding day, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, Olivia thought about that first terrible spring when the dead crops stretched to the horizon, and the future seemed so uncertain. She thought about the girl she had been, stepping off the train in North Platte with nothing but a trunk and a pouch of money, and a heart full of fear. She would not have recognized the woman she had become. That girl could not have imagined this life, this love, this profound sense of belonging. And yet every choice she had made, starting with the decision to hand Owen her savings, had led directly here. Clara came over to where they were standing, beautiful in her bridesmaid dress. "Mother, they are about to cut the cake. You and Father should be there." Olivia smiled at her daughter, this brilliant girl who was going to be a doctor, who was going to help people and make her own mark on the world. "We are coming." But before they moved to join the celebration, Owen pulled Olivia close and kissed her, a gentle kiss full of love and gratitude and promise. When they pulled apart, he said, "Here is to the next 17 years, and the 17 after that. And all the years until we are old and gray and bouncing great-grandchildren on our knees." "We are already getting gray," Olivia pointed out, touching the silver that streaked through Owen's dark hair. "Then we are right on schedule," Owen said with a grin. They walked hand in hand back to the celebration, back to their family and friends, back to the life they had built from nothing but determination and love. The farm that winter had tried to kill now bloomed with abundance. The mail-order bride's savings had indeed saved more than just the land. They had saved 2 lives, brought them together, and created something beautiful and lasting. And as Olivia cut the wedding cake alongside her son and new daughter, surrounded by her husband and children and the community they had become part of, she knew with absolute certainty that every penny, every hour of backbreaking work, every moment of fear and doubt had been worth it. This was the life she was meant to have. This was the love she was meant to find. This was home in every sense of the word. The celebration went on late into the night, with dancing and music and laughter echoing across the fields. The wheat that had been planted that spring was growing tall and strong, just as it did every year, a testament to hard work and good land, and the determination of the people who worked it. In a few months, it would be ready to harvest, and the cycle would begin again, as it had for 17 years and would for many more to come. But for tonight, there was no thought of work or worry about the future. Tonight was for celebrating love and family, for honoring the past and embracing the present. Tonight was for dancing under the stars with the person you loved, for watching your children grow into their own lives, for being grateful for every blessing, expected and unexpected. As the moon rose high and full over the Nebraska plains, Olivia found herself dancing with Owen, their bodies moving together with the ease of long practice. The music was sweet and slow, and around them, their family and friends danced and laughed. It was a perfect moment, the kind that you wanted to hold onto forever. "I love you," Owen whispered in her ear. "More today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today." "I love you too," Olivia whispered back, "always and forever." And in that moment, held in her husband's arms, surrounded by the fruits of their labor and their love, Olivia knew that sometimes the best dreams were the ones you never knew you had. Sometimes the greatest love came from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, when winter killed the crops and everything seemed lost, all it took was courage and faith and a willingness to invest everything you had in hope. The farm thrived. The family grew. And the love that had started as a fragile partnership in the face of disaster became the foundation of a legacy that would last for generations. That was the real harvest, Olivia thought as she danced with her husband under the Nebraska stars. Not the wheat or the corn, but the life they had built together, one season at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love at a time. And she would not change a single moment of it.